Of Washington is calling for a congressional investigation into whether Attorney General Alberto Gonzales should be impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors. And Republican Congressman Chris Cannon of Utah is a member of the Judiciary Committee. Congressman Inslee, the Attorney General of the United States, is he a liar?
Well, I think that that's just one of the difficulties, are the multiple deceptions and half-truths. But, you know, there are much deeper problems, and that is the firing of these assistant attorney generals to politicize the Justice Department. There's really no greater toxicity for American democracy than we have partisan politics interfering in the prosecution. And as a former prosecutor, I can tell you that when you stand in front of a jury, we need to have the faith of the American people in the judicial system. That has been compromised by this Attorney General on multiple occasions. It is indefensible. The President is really trying to defend the indefensible, and I know he believes...
But do you think he lied?
I believe he was deceptive consciously on multiple occasions.
Does that mean lying?
The language you would like, my mother asked me not to use that language as a congressman, but it is clear that he has indulged in half-truths, partial truths, and outright deceptions. You know, he told us when these Attorney General's firing came out that these were just performance-related matters. Well, the performance he was speaking of is that these men of integrity refused to engage in partisan political prosecutions, and as a result, they were fired. That is extremely dangerous. It is a deadly cocktail for democracy and will not stand.
Congressman,
it's fortunately not true.
What part of it isn't true?
Not to use the L word or anything like that, but this is a partisan gotcha game here, and that's all it is. Thus far, there is no evidence that anybody can adduce that would indicate that the people that were fired from the Justice Department were not fired for appropriate reasons. Now, the Democrats started out saying corruption, corruption, and now we're talking about deception and not being forthright with the American people. That is just not the case. In fact, your intro had Gonzales, this problem growing, when in fact what we're sitting here is with a deflated problem. This morning the New York Times had an article or actually I'm sorry, the Washington Post had an article that wasn't perjury. What Alberto Gonzales did the other day was actually really interesting. He appropriately answered a question. He had an obligation to be forthcoming, but he was being asked questions that he couldn't talk about in public. They should have gone into closed session if they wanted to know what the details that were.
The FBI director did. Bob Mueller did.
No, he was very careful. What Bob Mueller did was exactly the same thing that Alberto Gonzales did when he was testifying in the Senate. He used the same cover of a program, a national security program, that sort of thing, without identifying what the program was.
You know, this whole thing started, correct me if I'm wrong, with the dismissal of the U.S. attorneys, the several U.S. attorneys, including one from your home
That's
state.
correct, John McKay, good Republican from Seattle, Washington. These were Republicans who were fired for failing to do partisan activity against Democrats.
For many different things, and it was
they
not
were fired,
about that
and the reason, and we were told by this Attorney General that these were performance-related issues, that these people didn't show up to work or they were incompetent. It comes out that we find out that it's not the case. And I understand that the President believes Alberto Gonzales is doing a heck of a job, just like he believed that Brownie did and Rumsfeld did. But in fact, that as they did, he has seriously let down this country. And this is a national embarrassment. I wish the President would resolve it. We also have the problem of this Attorney General failing to follow his oath to insist on the statutes being followed regarding privacy and security. And I'm referring to the intelligence gathering where he went to try to get John Ashcroft in hospital.
You guys getting beat up here. You got to jump in.
Well, do you want to do the fact is, these are all the wish lists that the Democrats have, but they are not justified by the facts. The fact is that it was not Gonzales who said it was performance-related. That was one of his subordinates. It was probably an inappropriate thing to do. It made these guys mad and made them come back and say we're not incompetent, and they overwhelingly weren't.
One of his subordinates. Well, if a baseball team goes on a losing streak, the manager doesn't blame the third base coach. He's the Attorney General.
So what is the losing streak here? The losing streak is that you got people playing gotcha politics and screaming about what the Attorney General's done and screaming that he's lied, he's committed perjury, and that we're going to impeach him. And lo and behold, what he said was very carefully crafted, as you would expect an Attorney General to do. And what he did was an appropriate thing to do. If they want to know what was going on there, they should have gone into closed session and discussed that in a context where he could have explained what he was doing.
All right, you used the phrase, a carefully crafted answer. So I want to ask you a question. With my limited abilities, my limited knowledge of Washington, sitting there, an average guy watching TV, watching the Attorney General of the United States tell me why I should have to go to law school in order to understand an answer from the Attorney General of the United States.
Because he's being asked questions. He's an attorney, and he's being asked questions by attorneys in the Judiciary Committee about a top-secret program. And if you want an answer, a direct answer to that, you go into closed session so that the discussion can be had without telling the enemy what we're doing.
Realistically, do you think you have any shot at impeachment?
I do. This, it's a very serious issue. I don't think impeachment is something to be taken casually. It is really only the last resort. But the founders understood that when civil officers have abused their office, it is appropriate. And I think members are going to go home, listen to their folks in grocery stores and corners, and they're going to find out that people, Republicans, Independents, and Democrats, believe there's an embarrassment that needs to be removed. By the way, we call for an investigation. We intend to give due process to this Attorney General that he did not give to his fired U.S. attorneys.
That would be due process the press has not given the Attorney General, but you have acknowledged that Bill Clinton committed perjury, but that we shouldn't prosecute him. You have also said, Jay, personally, that the president should not be prosecuted. That's like, because it goes too far politically. And so you want to go after the Attorney General, who probably hasn't. In fact, I think everybody who's now looked at it has decided that he didn't commit perjury. And you want to go after him just because the press is out there not happy with this president?
Last word, quick word.
Everything's Bill Clinton's fault, according to the Republican Party.
Oh, the media. Oh, the media. Congressman Jay Inslee, Congressman Chris Cannon, thanks very much. Coming up, the FBI and IRS searched the house of the longest-serving Republican in the U.S. Senate. How much worse can things get for the president and his allies? And don't forget, we want to see your campaign commercials. Take part in the Hardball Campaign Ad Challenge. Send us your videos for your favorite presidential candidate. Here's an ad from Abraham Hamadeh of Scottsdale, Arizona.